Hi guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you a big book haul from Liverpool. So through a series of circumstances that involve a three-legged cat, my father ended up with 2 tickets to go see the Liverpool match this last weekend, and he took a Scottish husband, and my mum and I were like, why don't we go with and go book shopping? So we did. I absolutely adore Liverpool. It's one of my favorite cities. I am a little bit biased though because it is where my mother is from, and as a child we spent a lot of summers over there seeing family and just generally having a lovely time. So I have very good memories in Liverpool, and it's a city that I absolutely adore, so I was very, very happy to go up there. It also happens to have a spectacular Waterstones shop. If you ever get the chance to go, the Liverpool One Waterstones is a really, really lovely shop. It's huge and it has a really fantastic selection. It's not too overwhelming like I sometimes find the Piccadilly one can be. And it was a great place that had loads and loads of lovely books. So I actually went twice because of train delays. The first day we had some time to kill, and the second day I went with my mum, and she and I are both massive enablers, so I ended up with a massive pile of books. So without any further ado, these are the books that I got most recently in Liverpool. So the very first book that I got is one that I did not know existed, and that is Tom's Crossing by Mark Z. Danielewski. So he is the author of House of Leaves, a book that I did not finish, but scared me so badly that I had to keep it in a different room of my apartment. This is a big guy. This book clocks in at just over 1,200 pages, and it is one that has deckled edges as well, which I absolutely adore. I know that I'm one of like 3 people who like deckled edges, and this is a new horror book from him. I had no idea this had just come out. I wonder if it's a new release or not, but it was sat up at the tables up front. I had to get it at the end because I didn't want to carry this like brick of a book around shopping with me. So this book is small town horror. It's set in Utah, and I believe we flash back to crimes that happen in the 80s and then back to the present. There's going to be a lot of horror, there's going to be a lot of crime. I'm very curious about this one. It's one that I don't necessarily want to know a huge amount about, because that's how I went into House of Leaves, and I think that that really, really benefited me. I think that he's someone who writes a lot of weird stuff, and it's always best to go in knowing as little as possible. But if you're a big fan of House of Leaves, he's got another book. Who knew? The book that I was actually looking for when I went into the shop and ended up with all of these others is The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. My friend Grace got this book and she showed us the sprayed edges and we went, ooh, and I decided that I really, really wanted this. It's one that's been on my radar anyway. It is apparently a bit of a more romantasy-esque book, which is not usually my thing, but it does have a quote on the back from T. Kingfisher, which is always going to get me. And apparently it's a retelling of The Beast of Gévaudan, which is the tale of the first werewolf. It's presumably set in France. And it is a devastating love story, a bewitching twist on history, a blood-drenched hunt for purpose, power, and redemption. This sounds fucking great. I'm totally in, and I love that so much. It doesn't quite match up with the end papers, but it looks like it matches up with the end papers, and I'm just totally here for that. And I've also just realized, look underneath here, oh, another book that has a fantastic cover is She Made Herself a Monster, and this is by Anna Kovacheva. This is one I've had my eye on for a little while. I will be honest, I have a NetGalley copy of this book, so it's currently sitting on my Kobo, but I really, really love this cover, and it looks so incredibly interesting. So we have a vampire hunter who rides into a small village that believes to have a curse, and this kind of rumors of this curse have persisted for many years because Anka, whose parents died on the night of her birth, is believed to be to blame for said curse. But now Anka has reached womanhood and she is going to be forced into a marriage that she does not want. It says here, when animal corpses start to appear in the village square and eggs filled with blood are found in the chicken coops, panic rises. Yes, quite right. The villagers turn to Yana for help, and she and Anka end up kind of teaming up together. This sounds like maybe it could have some sapphic undertones to it. I'm not 100% sure, but this sounds fabulous. I'm not usually hugely into vampire books, but I do love something that has this kind of like gothic-y feel to it. Next up, I have Psychopomp and Circumstance, and this is by Eden Royce. This is a little novella. It's from Tor.com. So I won't lie, I was initially just attracted to this cover because it's absolutely beautiful. However, I think this sounds like a really interesting one, and Tor.com novellas tend to be pretty good. So this follows a young woman named Fee, who is the daughter of a freed Black family in North Carolina, and she has kind of been coddled to an inch of her life by her mother, who has dictated this kind of path that her life is going to go down. The family gets word that her aunt Cleo, who has been long estranged from the family, has passed away, and Fee risks her mother's wrath to rise up and accept the role of Pomp, which is a highly honored duty of planning the funeral services, and she has to travel alone to the town of Horizon to her aunt's unsettled home, and she soon discovers visions and shadows beckon from every reflective surface, some of the secrets that transcend the borders of life and death. This sounds absolutely wonderful. It says on the front that it's a deeply loving exploration of grief, loss, and the righting of past wrongs. I think this is going to be a really, really wonderful book. I had never heard of it before. I know nothing about it, and that's always a little bit of a treat for me. So I said that I'm not usually into vampire books, and I have a second one here. This is The Midnight Shift, and this is by Cheon Soon-ran. This is apparently a massive bestseller in Korea. It is a cult book, which, like, huzzah. I love a cult book, and it's one that I've seen floating around for a little bit, and I decided to finally pick it up. So in the outskirts of Seoul, there is a rash of suicides in hospitals and care homes of elderly people, and this brings together a detective and a vampire hunter because of the nature of these bodies, which are bloodless. This sounds like it's going to be a really interesting one. I love it when books are set in cities that I don't necessarily know a huge amount about, but especially when they are set kind of in their underground, in their sort of nightlife, in the lonely hours of night. I think this sounds like it's going to be wonderful. The next book is one that I'm really, really thrilled to have found because I don't think it has a UK publisher, and I'm really surprised that it was on the shelves in that Waterstones. This is It Was Her House First by Cherry Priest. I love few things more than a really good haunted house book, and this sounds like it's going to be so much fun. So in this book, we have the malevolent spirit of a silent film star haunting her old cliffside manor and taking countless lives throughout the years. And there is her kind of eternal nemesis, Inspector Bartholomew Sloane, who has kind of watched her wreak havoc from the sidelines for years and feels immensely guilty about this. Now the house has a new owner. We have a woman named Ronnie Mitchell who has moved in and is blissfully unaware of this house's incredibly dark past. She buys it sight unseen, and she has a background in renovation, and she is totally thrilled to be moving in. However, her arrival stirs more than just dust in the rooms of the house. It sounds like it's going to be so much fun. It's like Norma Desmond haunting a house, which I'm just totally here for. Next, I have a queer horror story I'm very, very excited to read. He's the Devil, and this is by Toby Coventry. So in this book, we follow Simon. Simon has always been a good guy. He is employee of the month. He's fixing up his flat for his landlord. He always tries to do right by everyone. However, his best friend moves out of their shared flat, and he becomes incredibly lonely until a new roommate moves in. Apparently, this is a wickedly funny, chillingly suspenseful, modern-day horror story, painfully relatable to anyone who's ever had to share their living space with someone they honestly would rather not share it with. Oh my god, this sounds like it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm really looking forward to this. One of my best friends is reading this right now, and they have said that they absolutely love it, and I will like it too, and that is good enough for me. So something that I found really interesting this year is there are two books kind of very similar topics with the same name coming out this spring. One of those books is Tradwife, and this is by Saratoga Schaefer. For the curious, I do happen to have an arc of the other one. This is Tradwife by Sarah Langan. Not one that I've read yet, but it comes out in May. I'm very curious to read both of these side by side. So back to the Saratoga Schaefer one. This is apparently like Rosemary's Baby for the influencer age. I cannot wait. There's something about like influencer life, especially kind of the Tradwife side of things, that just goes so incredibly well with horror. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm projecting. So in this book, we follow a young woman named Camille who is very much a Tradwife influencer. She's cooking and cleaning and homesteading and documenting it all for her followers. However, she is missing the one thing that every Tradwife needs, and that is a baby. Without a baby, her whole image, her brand feels incomplete, and her husband begins to withdraw, and she becomes desperate. So she discovers a crumbling well hidden in a wheat field behind her new house, and she is drawn to it. That is never a good thing. And unsure of what else to do, she makes a wish. Soon she is haunted by vivid dreams that she believes are divine. There's something that visits her, something that's not quite angelic, and her belly swells unnaturally fast, her cravings turn raw, and yet her announcement goes viral. This sounds like it's going to be so good. I'm so excited for this. Ever since reading Play Nice by Rachel Harrison last year, which was my second favorite book of 2025, I have been wanting more and more and more influencer horror, and I think this is going to scratch that itch. I did get a little stack of classics here that I can sort of tear through very quickly. So the first is this beautiful little penguin cloth-bound edition of Lyrical Ballads by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who is one of my favorite poets. I'm not a poetry girly, but I do like Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And this contains a number of their poems, and it's one that I'm really looking forward to very slowly reading through. It starts with the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which has always been one of my absolute favorites, and there's a couple of others in here that I'm familiar with. We have lines written a few miles above Tintern Abbey, but the rest of them I don't think I'm hugely familiar with, so I'm looking forward to this. I think this is going to be a nice spring read. I broke down and I got myself a copy of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I read this when I was like 22, and I was very much under the wrong impression, as I think a lot of people are, about what Wuthering Heights is. It's not a romance, it's a capital R romance. We're stomping across the moors, it's gothic, everyone's terrible. I had no real tolerance for that kind of thing when I was 22, and now I'm 37. I think that perhaps it's time to give this one another try. Generally the Brontes aren't for me, but we'll give it a bash. I've been really enjoying the Penguin horror releases, so I got this little copy of Classic Horror, an anthology, and this has horror stories from a number of authors, some very familiar, some less so. So it starts with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. We've got a Mary Shelley story that I never read, we've got Fall of the House of Usher, we've got some Henry James, we've got Robert Louis Stevenson, we've got The Yellow Wallpaper, which is a fabulous story, and some other things that I've not heard of before, so this sounds like it's going to be a really good one. Bright Sword by Lev Grossman was the very first book that I read this year, and I absolutely loved it, despite the fact that basically all of my knowledge of King Arthur comes from the Sword and Stone film and Monty Python the Holy Grail. So I decided I was going to remedy that because I enjoyed it so much. I wanted kind of the background, so I found this beautiful copy of The Death of King Arthur. This is by Sir Thomas Malory, but it is a translation and retelling from Peter Ackroyd. I'm very curious about this. We'll see what I think, but there's so many versions of King Arthur's story out there, right? The Thomas Malory one is, I think, one of the best known ones, and it's apparently supposed to be fabulous. So Peter Ackroyd is a, really well-known guy, so we'll see how this one goes. Next is another classic, but perhaps a more recent one. This is Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith. I don't think I've ever seen this film. It's a hugely famous film, if you weren't aware. It's got the classic premise of like two strangers meet on a train, they agree to do a murder for the other because there's no there's no motive, and they will supposedly never get caught. I've seen the CSI episode that's based on Strangers on a Train. I don't think I've ever seen the film, but maybe after I read this, we'll go ahead and watch it. But I had no idea this was actually a book. I had only ever known about the film, and I'm really, really curious about this because it sounds like it's just exactly my cup of tea. My love of Japanese crime fiction is well documented on this channel, so I picked up a copy of The Samurai Detectives, and this is by Shotaro Ikanami. This is the first volume in a series of books. My mom has read this one, and she really, really enjoyed it. She picked up the second one, which has just come out, and I decided to give this first one a try. It's a historical set mystery, and I do feel like the title kind of says it all. Samurai Detectives. This sounds like it's great. Mom really enjoyed it, so I think I'm going to really like this too. And the very last book that I have is Black Flame by Gretchen Felker Martin. I have never actually read any of her stuff before, and I'm very, very curious. I love horror books that have to do with film because although I am a giant wimp and cannot generally watch a lot of horror films, I love books about horror movies. So this book is set around a film called The Baroness, which is an infamous exploitation film that was long thought to be destroyed by the Nazis. However, a copy of it has resurfaced. We follow a woman named Ellen who is restoring the hedonistic film, and it begins to change her life. She's consumed by visions and voices. She becomes convinced that the film is real and is happening to her, and that frame by frame, she is unleashing its occult horrors onto the world, and her life quickly begins to spiral out of control. This sounds like it's exactly the kind of thing that I love from a horror book, and we'll see how this goes. I feel like a novella is the perfect place to dip into an author's work. So that is it for my Liverpool book haul. There is going to be one more of these big hauls because we're going to Hay on Wye in a couple of weeks here, and then I think it's time for a book buying ban. Because it's getting a little bit out of control, but I am very, very happy with my bookish purchases, and I cannot wait to dig into them. I would love to know in the comments below if you have read any of these books, if you have a place that you would recommend I start, and I would love to hear if you've picked up anything interesting recently. That is it for this video, and I will talk to you soon.